I am only here to say thank you to you and to the UW Extension folks for traveling to Mineral Point and for helping us and inspiring us to think about what might be for High Street. So thank you to all of you and to all of you for being here on this cold night. I'm going to turn it over to Barry Hotman, who is our Iowa County Community Educator, and let's go from here. All right, Barry Hotman.
Thanks, Joy. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. It's been a great process. As Joy talked about, I'm Barry Hotman. I'm the Community Development Educator for UW Extension. My office is in Dodgeville at the Health and Human Services Building on Chapel Street. I will be your point of contact moving forward with all the ideas and visions that will be developed here today. So hopefully that together we can move things forward and work together. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Todd Johnson.
All right, thank you everybody for showing up on this cold night. And what's the score? Is it changed? No, okay. So I'll make sure. Just stop.
I'll put my hand up.
There you go. Perfect. All right, thank you. My name is Todd Johnson. I'm with the University of Wisconsin River Falls, but I work for the Extension Service. I am a land use and community development specialist, so I work all over the state of Wisconsin. Prior to that gig, I was the community development educator for Grant County, just your neighbor, southwest of here. And so I'm very familiar with this area. Actually, I was born in Prairie du Chien and spent the first 3 years of my life in Grant County, and then came back for a reunion, and then lived in this neck of the woods for about almost 8 years before going up to River Falls. So I love the Driftless area. I love this area of the state, and when we had an opportunity to do some work in Mineral Point, I got really excited, and we put together a really fantastic team of folks from all over the state, and we imported one from Minnesota as well. Just to tell you a little bit about our program, we are the University of Wisconsin Extension Service. If you're not familiar with Extension, our mission is to connect the people of Wisconsin with the university's resources and vice versa, connecting the university's resources and the communities so that we can learn from communities so that we can be better at what we do and help everyone else out as well. Our program that we're offering is this Design Wisconsin program, in which we try to help communities develop this shared vision of the future. This particular assignment that we were given from you folks was to try to come up with a shared vision for the future of High Street and how to imagine it while under construction. So what we did was we put together a team of folks who were willing to dedicate some time and live with us together in the Walker House for a couple days and get to know you folks for a little bit. We start off with a survey, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we also met with high school students, get a sense of what it's like to live in this community as a youth. And then we had a workshop last night with members of the community, especially folks who are business owners and people who live in the downtown. And then after we did all that, we spent today putting together some ideas based on what all of you had told us. So before we share all that stuff with you, I think maybe we need to, let's go to the next slide. We're setting the stage. We had a local artist, Keith, who's new to the community, do this nice little model here, and I think it really kind of helps us talk about what we're doing here, which is setting the stage for this next chapter of High Street, which is your beloved Main Street. This is the heart of your community. This is where you show off. And we want to make sure we do a good job. So go to the next slide. And how we sort of decided to talk about the process is we've got the who that's involved, we've got the what we're trying to do, and how we're going to do it. Okay, those three things. It's really simple, just three things. All right. And I think that as you see the presentation move along tonight, you're going to get a sense of these three things and how important they are that they work together. And it's going to take some time, it's going to take some energy, but it should be really fun and exciting because it's so darn important. And everybody knows that, right? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. I think we're going to do some introductions first because I want to make sure that these folks get recognized for volunteering their time. You already met myself and Barry, and I think team members, if you want, just take turns coming up here and introducing yourself. Tell them your name, what you do for a living, and where you live.
Hi, I'm Kristen Runge. I live in Wanakee and work out of the UW Extension office in Madison. My background is in communication and marketing and communication and mass media research. And I've been doing charrettes since 2015. They let me color the pictures and do all the advanced work. I don't get to actually draw anything though, so none of this work will be mine that's involved in drawing.
Hi, I'm Karina Ward. I am a community development educator similar to Barry. I work in Ozaukee County. I live in Milwaukee County, and my background is in community regional planning with an emphasis on tourism and downtown development.
Hi, I'm Rachel Rampin. I'm actually finishing up 2 master's degrees at UW-Madison this spring. So a Master of Public Affairs and a Master of Urban and Regional Planning. And I work for Kristen at UW Extension.
Hi everyone, I'm Adriana Saya. I'm the Downtown Development Promotions Manager with Wisconsin Main Street and Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, and I live in Verona.
Hey everyone, I'm Steve Bravo and I'm Professor Emeritus with UW Extension. I was a community development educator in Jefferson County for 23 years, and I'm one of the founding members of the Community Vitality and Placemaking team. I live in Wauwatosa now.
Excuse the slow guy here. I'm Bill Ryan with UW Extension. My focus is on downtown economic development and market analysis. So I'm the only bean counter in this row of talent in front of me. And I look forward to meeting tonight.
Hi, I'm Neil Clemmy. I am a youth development educator, so I am not a community development person or have the experience that these guys do, so no booing when I'm talking later, please.
Hi everybody, my name is Vicki Doherty. I am a second-year MBA candidate in the Bowles Center for Arts Administration at the UW-Madison. So I'm a graduate student, kind of learning and helping out for the first time with the charrette. Very excited to be here with you all. Pass it off to my classmates.
Hi everyone, my name is Luis Dominguez. I'm originally from Spain, but I've been living in Madison for 3 years now. I'm also a second-year MBA student at UW-Madison.
And my name is Grace Davis, and I'm the second year at, and I did my MBA at Madison. So.
And last but not least, David Timmerman, two more, so definitely not last. David Timmerman, editor of the Grant County Herald Independent over in Lancaster. You guys had a really great game last week. And love Mineral Point, and happy to be participating in this.
Okay, score update? Okay. No score?
12-14.
12-14. Mike Lamb, I am the import from the Twin Cities. Work for an architecture and industry firm in Minneapolis. Background is in architecture and urban design. Know this guy Todd from the Minnesota design team, which the Wisconsin design team's modeled after. We go back almost to the last century working on some of those things. I was a member of the first Wisconsin design team in Grantsburg.
I guess I am the last one, right? Ed Freer, landscape architect, urban designer, private practitioner. I volunteered to do this with my friends on numerous occasions. I live and work out of Madison, but I practice nationally. And my joy, my career, and my life is transformation of places like Mineral Point. We've got a great community. We're excited. We didn't have a lot of time, so be kind on the comments. But I think we were energized with everybody last night, and hopefully we'll continue the dialogue.
Good, so community input. When we talk about the first stage in the process is the who. The who is everyone in the community, and what does the community want? when we're talking about the future of High Street and making it through the construction of High Street when that finally begins. So many of you in this room helped when Barry brought me down back at the end of September, beginning of October, to talk about doing a community survey to allow people in the community to give their input and their advice. The reason we did the survey was because of the High Street reconstruction and the design strip, but there were some questions on there if you took the survey about housing and some other issues that are related to just, evolving, developing, and growing as a community. I'm not going to go over the survey results tonight. They will be made available on the chamber website and the city website when they're finished. The data that I pulled for the charrette, it was actually gathered between the 8th of October and 26th of October. Over that time period, we had 501 residents and 142 visitors take the survey. That is phenomenal. When I checked yesterday at 3 o'clock, right before we gathered at the Walker House as a community, it was up to 628. I know it's been active today. I've been getting pings on my phone, so I think it's closer to 650 right now. So for all of those of you in the audience that participated in that process of writing and distributing, would you guys mind raising your hands? Thank you. Thank you 100 times over. Give you a round of applause. We are only as good as the information that we can gather, and you guys really hit it out of the ballpark with the survey. So the only question from the survey that I'll talk about tonight is this one we asked. Is there any, at the end of the survey, is there anything about the High Street District or Mineral Point that you would like to share with us? And we pulled out this Wordle. These are the most commonly cited words. And I think for me, it sums up a lot of what I read in the comments. High Street, this is coming as news to absolutely no one, is a beloved portion of the community. People that come here as visitors, people that live here treasure this particular space. They treasure the community as a whole. So the overall community of Mineral Point is very special and sacred to people, but High Street really seems to be at the heart of it. And granted, we were asking questions about High Street, so that was a little bit of a give, but it's pretty fantastic, the results that we got. So this is what we're keeping in mind along with the other data when we sat down today and when we talked with the community last night. So would you mind, Vicki, the next one? Thank you. When we read over this, when we talked with people last night, there's a lot of things to celebrate in the community, but one of the things that we're very aware of is we were brought here because there are some current concerns over how are we going to make it through this reconstruction. So that's really what we were listening for. And when we listened last night, there were two major concerns that really themes we heard again and again. People were concerned that businesses will have to close for a period of time. That was a major concern among participants, concern among customers for businesses as well. The second one is that construction will close the whole of High Street for an entire summer. It's kind of like the worst fear, right? Of what's going to happen. So it's not the way it'll happen, actually. All businesses will be accessible during construction. So no one's doors will be shut during construction. And the second, pre-construction planning, which is something we'll talk about tonight, can minimize any of the disruption to business or sales. We're going to really work with the community on heading those things off at the pass. The second major thing that we understand to happen is that construction can be phased. So sections of High Street can be closed off, reconstructed, and then reopened, and then the construction will move on. And so at no point will the entire street need to be closed down. And that was a relief too, because this is an area that attracts a lot of visitors. People still want to participate in it and want to join in the community that are from the community as well. So those are the big concerns that we had. Some of the things that will help us get through this is a strong communication plan going into construction. We understand that every other week there will be meetings with the construction management, so we'll have a strong plan not only to meet with them face-to-face and get information, but also using modern tools, websites, Facebook updates, Twitter updates, things that will make that information about what's happening immediately accessible so that folks will not be wondering what's open, which stretch is under construction today. We'll know those things. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Rachel, who's going to talk about who?
So the importance of community. is key in any vitality and placemaking project. And community development in the context of building community capacity is comprised of development in and of the community. So before I get to the difference between in and of the community, our purpose here tonight is to help you learn, organize, and build your capacity to make Mineral Point an even more special place to live and work. And our focus, especially this first part, is the people involvement considerations, which is the who. So development in the community, which is the what for this project, which we'll get to, consists of things that are physical, of form, and structural. So buildings and infrastructure are really good examples. This is often what you think of when you hear economic development. Development of the community, however, is the who aspect. And it consists of the people, organizations, and especially the relationships between them within a community.
So although Mineral Point is not a Main Street community, you can definitely implement and follow the Main Street approach in your community. So the Main Street approach offers community-based revitalization initiatives with a practical, adaptable framework for downtown transformation that is easily tailored to local communities. So the Main Street approach is organized around these 4 points: economic vitality, design, organization, and promotion. Economic vitality focuses on capital, incentive, and other economical and financial tools to assist new and existing businesses. Design supports a community's transformation by enhancing the physical and visual assets that set the commercial district apart. Promotions positions the downtown or commercial district as the center of the community and hub of economic activity while creating a positive image that showcases a community's unique characteristics. An organization involves creating a strong foundation for a sustainable effort, including cultivating partnerships, community involvement, and resources for the district. So by following these 4 points of the Main Street approach, you can begin to revitalize and strengthen your downtowns. So when it comes to creating a strategic team for the construction project, we identified 2 parts: the internal team and the external stakeholders. The internal team is formed in order to manage the logistics of all the aspects of the construction. So that's before, during, and after construction. This is the core team that will have consistent and regular communication to touch base on project progress and identify any issues which arise. They will be the primary connection to the external stakeholders. So the external stakeholders are defined as those individuals and groups that affect or are affected by the project. And they have various levels of interest or involvement in the project, starting with awareness. And they are the main target of project-based communication from the internal team.
So when we sat down and started looking at this project, Todd had this idea maybe that because we're in the Opera House, that maybe we should play off a little production type theme. So I ran with it. So welcome to Whoville. Who's all familiar with How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Dr. Seuss? All right? So who remembers these beautiful images of the Who's in Whoville getting together, working together as a community? So that's going to be a key in all of this, is the importance of coming together as a community in this process, relationship building and bridging, so that we're all maybe working together as a team with a shared vision of what you're going to see evolve here tonight. There's going to be bumps in the road, just like the folks in Whoville when the Grinch came down and stole all their Christmas ornaments and whatnot. They still celebrated, right? They still worked together. So at some point there may be some bumps in the road with this project, but working together, we'll work through it, right? And lastly, I always use this with my son Connor, who's sitting in the back. Teamwork makes the dream work. So, next slide, please. So I'm not going to go through and read all this. Feel free to. I'll just say a few things. We will need to work with you and the stakeholders in regards to an engagement and analysis plan. We're not going to get into the details of everything here, but it's important to understand that we're going to need to develop a group of stakeholders that will be a part of the internal team that will work with engineers and the construction management company and a few key individuals, maybe in the 5 to 7 range of key stakeholders within the community. Outside of that, you're going to have the involvement of the community, and there's levels of citizenry involvement, and that's depicted by this ladder here and the various rungs within the ladder. Next, you have different roles, and again, I won't get into all the roles that are listed here, but it's just a framework. And how we get to the how, this will make a little more sense as the presentation goes on. But basically, we identified 3 periods of time, a before, a during, and after construction, where there may not be clear-cut endings, there may not be clear distinctions between the processes, but the teams will need to work together to keep moving it forward through those phases. So stakeholders and groups of stakeholders will at different times take on different roles at various points in the project, depending on their level of involvement.
I will kind of walk you through a couple of ideas and talk about the, is this loud enough? Yeah. And we'll start talking about what you might consider as you move forward from a design vocabulary, material vocabulary, and some of the enhancements that can result out of what some might perceive as a crisis. Oh my God, they're going to reconstruct a road. Well, how can we make the best out of that, please? So you are blessed with this incredible eclectic collection of buildings and signs and land use and just the history of Mineral Point. So one of the first and most important things about a streetscape is the framework, the edge, the buildings. It's your buildings that define this incredible corridor that you refer to as High Street. So now what should we do with this and build on this? You don't have to change a lot. So in this next image, this is your streetscape. So we were looking at your lights, we were looking at your surface treatment and what's going to change. So you're going to get a new road. You don't have room to change the geometry. Face a building to face a building. On the west side, your sidewalk is narrower than on the east side. If we refer to High Street going north-south for conversation purposes. So what's important is the selection of material, the longevity and life cycle of material, the cost, and then how can we creatively and with common sense make something more attractive or build on what needs to fulfill your needs. So there's 3 or 4 major components in the sketch. We heard last night the importance of being responsible, common sense, and what should these materials do. So the sidewalks in this image, and I'll show you some examples of what these materials look like in place, would be concrete. And so instead of having 4 or 5 foot sheets or 10 by 10 foot joints, we suggest making something out of standard concrete, but detailing it, tooling it, the finish work. You have great craftsmen in this community, let's show it in the walkway. But it also does, it gives you longevity and a big bang for the buck in terms of the flexibility of its use, whether somebody puts a planter there, a chair, a cape, whatever. Where we class it up a little is on the edge of the sidewalk, then we can incorporate a curve that might reflect the geology, geography, the history of Mineral Point, and perhaps use a stone. The stripe in the middle, instead of using a standard yellow or white painted line, the idea is to actually insert some of the native stone so that when you cross it, you feel the texture, it clearly defines the travel lanes. So to differentiate from the sidewalk and the road and not make it feel like an interstate, we're suggesting that you stay with an asphalt street. It's just as durable, the cost is similar, and what's nice about the asphalt is you live in a very hilly town. You have a lot of drainage challenges and odd little fillets and corners. You can shape and implement an asphalt road you can craft it much better than concrete. So you'll notice there's some missing light poles. Well, as this gets reconstructed and you put in new utilities, I'm going to show you a couple options of what you might consider for the future. In this illustration, when you go back through history, when cities became electrified, they were so proud they strung lights across their streets. This is referred to as a catenary light fixture. Mike and I worked on Dubuque. If you want to go down to Dubuque, the Millwork District, you'll see these wonderful lights that cross the street like they did when we went from gas lights to electric lights. It adds character, but more importantly, it frees up your sidewalk. So I have fewer poles, I'm having fewer penetrations in my sidewalk, I have more room to put things or walk around them, and it's easier on operations and maintenance. And then lastly, there was a lot of discussion last night and prior to that about greening it up, making it softer. So you see on the buildings here, instead of tree canopies, utilizing more of a two-dimensional greenery. Vine pockets, planters, rooftop, and you can go around the world, but even just in Wisconsin, you'll see a lot of application of vines to buildings that also you have a whole element of green. There are vines that are evergreens, there are vines that have blossoms, roses, trailing roses, and even those vines that shed their leaves, over time they have this wonderful armature, and you get the shades and shadows and textures that add a whole layer of interest to your buildings. Next, please. So, to the left, that's concrete, so it's not a 4x5 or a 10x5, and with the right craftsman and the tooling, you get shadows, you can get a certain richness, and then over time, you get a nice patina. Now, if money were no object, I'd be pitching pavers, but I don't think that's a realistic solution in this case. I encourage you not to pursue colored concrete. The colors are difficult to control. They never turn out the way you want them to. And then when you have any kind of a repair, you get this patch that is a different color than the patch next to it. So good old honest concrete that's installed correctly, that's crafted well, actually is a very good solution. So how do we enrich this where the street meets the curb? Here again, the use of stone, some cobble around the flow line can dramatically enrich, create texture. And what both of these do is they create scale. So when you walk down a sidewalk that has large panels, you don't have any scale. So this scale, again, reduces it to a human scale, that's a decorative scale, it's a crafted scale. And then the other idea is as you come to the end of the sidewalks, then you start integrating some of the native stone. So this creates a texture, it slows you down, becomes a great way to articulate the end of the block because most of us are on our cell phone right now. But more importantly, it's also much more attractive than putting in these steel plates with bumps to accommodate the disabled, the sight impaired. So it acts as that, it ties into the geography. Next, please. Lighting. In addition to the street lighting, can you imagine coming down 2 or 3 blocks of High Street at night? And there's lovely cities and villages all over the country. With the LED technology today, the intervention is minuscule, the cost has been reduced, and the energy consumption is also considerably less. And some of these bulbs, 70,000 hours of utilization, so the maintenance is dramatically reduced. But you can imagine whether you're in Central City, Colorado, Woodstock, Vermont, or Mineral Point, Wisconsin, walking down here during the evening. It's safer, it's comfortable, it introduces a level of vitality at night, even if all the businesses aren't open. Next, please. Catenary lights, what are they? The middle image is actually a photo of Dubuque, the Millwork District. So lights can be stretched across the street. They can then incorporate seasonal lighting, banners, whatever. It gives you a whole other dimension of utilizing your street in a different way. And lights can also be attached to the building, as you see on the right. That is a contemporary light fixture that's on a wall that was built in the 1500s. So you can blend a minimalist contemporary intervention with efficient technology, but also complement the history of your community. Next. So the vertical greenery. So here's an image of some of your buildings and the idea of putting in vine pockets in the sidewalk or planters and let them grow up along the building. So you can assist the beginning with steel grate work, cables, steel cables, or just the right selection of the right combined with the tendrils will do the chore for you. Next, please. So here are some examples of this added dimension and character of scale and greenery that are places that we love to visit, love to be in. It's also heat reduction, energy consumption. It has many added values, but more importantly, it has an aesthetic and a scale and a comfort that makes it more timeless. Next, please. So I just added this one sketch here because as I was going up and down High Street, and we were talking as a group, I was fascinated by a park that didn't seem that accessible, Library Park. You have these retaining walls, and they come up, and you have a grade to deal with. I get that. But the thought here is that you could step the wall where the cars are parked, add a little bump out area where the 2 handicap spaces are, and just move the handicap spaces over, and then terrace some seating walls, more of an organic outdoor amphitheater that then follows the topography and respects the existing trees. And all of a sudden you have a place to gather for an informal conversation. You could have Saturday morning story reading next to the library. You could have a gathering for the young and a great place just to hang out and celebrate High Street. So just an idea of when you're reconstructing the sidewalk, how far do you want to push it and put in new utilities? And I'll call it a tweak of the grading to make this park more accessible and more of, it's really a downtown central feature. It's your common, it's the place. And you can stay Library Park or you can name it something else. Next please. So the idea of a fountain at the end, something that you hear the brook next door, the whole history of the river, the topography, it doesn't have to take up a lot of space. And the idea of the stone walls that are organic, they're not a formalized, strong, formalized geometric amphitheater type solution. With that, then we'll go into some wayfinding. Next, please. And Mike will walk us through the next 6 or 8 slides.
All right, thanks, Ed. Glad you talked about new names. I didn't know if you were going to mention that or not. So Ed's talking about rebuilding, and what we're talking about and what's going to happen here, and it'll be exciting at times, is reconstructing High Street from building face to building face. So that's everything. So the street lights come out, sidewalks come out, water mains are going to go in, storm sewer's going to go in. It's a rebuilding thing. We're throwing out some ideas tonight for you that not all of them will stick, not all of them are going to make it into the final design, but at least it begins the community collectively thinking about how this place can be enhanced, can be reconnected, and can be shined up and can be better than it was before. So if we're talking about taking advantage of enhancements, here's one idea. This is an existing simple black metal signage, standard kiosk, whatever you call it, on one side of the street. So we're thinking about using that as a sort of a template to think about how you begin to create a family or a palette of wayfinding signage for all kinds of different purposes, whether it's information or street signs, directional signage, identification, those kinds of things. And maybe even adding a little contemporary pop of color there to just give it a little, to kind of offset the idea that, yeah, it's a historic district, but it's also got some playfulness and some color to it as well. So the next slide. Parking, and we heard a lot about parking from the community, and the group talked a lot about parking. We know very well there needs to be better parking management and organization, and we know that maybe strategically you may need to add some parking here or there. We'll talk a little bit about that. These are the existing parking lots, and there's the library park. You can see in green, that's the library park I was just talking about. So High Street, if you think about this, High Street from a functional standpoint doesn't work or exist in isolation. It depends on Fountain, it depends on Commerce, it depends on Jail Alley and Doty. It's a great little organic network or grid of streets, if you will. So that's going to help you in this reconstruction process. It's going to help you get around and navigate and be able to provide access to a lot of different places, including parking. And you may have to find some creative ways to do temporary parking. I think there's some odd ordinance on your zoning code that talks about parking on Jail Alley. You may have to suspend that for a few months, but whatever the case may be. But the idea that there is very convenient parking within just steps of High Street, and you get a workout too at the same time. Okay, next step. So some of the ideas we talked about, one of them was destination parking lots or destination parking. Was that what we called it? I know. Well, I'm getting to that. Okay. Don't steal my thunder. So the idea of having sort of laying out the welcome mat for your visitors and your tourists. The idea that maybe you could drive up to this lot on Gel Alley, and it's a place where you can introduce the more vertical urban canopy. Ed was talking about it's going to be hard. We really can't plant trees down on High Street, but in these parking lots we can green them. We can address stormwater management and runoff, and place put a really nice green edge on it. Another thing we can do with these car parks, let's go to the next one, is we can provide some facilities. Maybe this is the welcome station for where you're coming from out of town. You go like, well, I'm going to park here. I'm going to get directed to park here. Wow, there's a bathroom. I can just walk right in and use it 24/7. Maybe after 12, it's a quarter or something. I don't know. But again, a green edge, an urban canopy. You're greening the downtown, and you're addressing the ability to add some strategic supply where it's needed. And we're working off against some historic architecture that provides information, bathrooms, restrooms, those kinds of things. And so we're calling them car parks because it comes, help me with this if I get it wrong, it's from Cornwall. Okay, but let's go Cornwall, okay. So the idea is this is a cool place. Maybe you didn't want to hang out or have a street fair or a festival or something like that on the weekend. So next one. And so here's the last slide I'll talk about, and this is so you can see in this diagram High Street's in yellow, and you can see all these car parks that are illustrated with the landscape edges, some internal connections. The other thing that kind of impressed us was we felt like you had a wealth of publicly owned property, and so every property you see here that's it has trees around it, that's publicly owned. And in the case of, we understand you're getting a police station and public works facility. So the idea that on Fountain, that public works facility is going to go away in a few days, the idea that that could be an opportunity to think about providing some additional housing in your community, whether it's workforce housing, affordable housing, whether it's detached or attached. You could have small starter single-family homes or small starter duplexes. This is an idea of what I'm calling Fountain Village. It's a pocket neighborhood. So it's all organized. It's a little bit higher density development, but it's all organized around a common green space. So it provides sort of a community effect, community value there right on Fountain, very, very near High Street as well. So with that, obviously, how are we going to do all this? Ed's talking a lot about rebuilding. We've also talked about the how. How are we going to do this? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to somebody to talk about the how. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's Bill.
It's all about strong sales and using the road construction as a catalyst for business retention, business expansion, something called succession planning, and business recruitment. Now, there are different needs in the community. Like I spoke with a few business operators yesterday. One business operator said there's a need for a new hardware store in town. Another mentioned something about a restaurant in town, a bakery, coffee shop in town. So this is an opportunity at this period of time to also look at business recruitment and what kind of businesses might make sense and how we bring those in. For business expansion, it's things like looking at your current customer list to do that and maybe reconnect with them, or maybe consider an e-commerce type website to bring in some more business during this whole time. So there are a lot of things that can be done to build sales, to help your businesses survive construction and thrive in the future. And I can see this process of road construction as being a catalyst for helping your businesses become more successful. So it's not a lot of color, not a lot of fancy drawings here, but a lot of this is about business and helping your businesses take advantage of the situation and thrive from it.
All right, so the first thing I'm going to talk about, and I'll just give a little background on my background. I'm a youth development educator, like I said. I do a lot of work in engaging young people and getting young people involved in community decision making. In little town of Hurley, we have youth that actually serve on the county board with the county board elected officials. We've done a lot of things to get to that point, and I think some of the suggestions that I'm going to give here are things that can be built into this process that would engage young people, make them feel more part of the community, give you a whole different perspective on the process and the things that are happening. So, first of all, we've talked about, and it's been mentioned a little bit earlier, creating a group where we called it the 2021 team, a team of local residents who work together to help make decisions about, where people can park their cars, where the bathrooms go, when garbage gets picked up, where the deliveries get dropped off along the street. That has to be a group decision. That has to be a group of leaders who have skin in the game, who help make those decisions, and you need to work together to do it. I would also recommend or suggest asking a couple high school kids to join that and give their perspective. If nothing else, they get to feel like part of the decision. They feel like more part of the community. I don't see any downside to it, I guess. We asked them what they thought was missing from High Street, and they expressed that there isn't really a place for them to hang out and don't feel a real connection or opportunity to be involved in the activities. We've already given a couple of suggestions of how you can include them in that and make them feel like part of the process. They shared a few examples that they would like to see, including a downtown fire pit or a place for them to hang out. That library park could be a place for that, a place for them to hang out and have it where they're not, shooed away. A lot of kids express that they feel like they're just, after a certain hour, they're told they can't be here. So that might be a place where they could be you could watch, people could drive by, they're not going to be doing anything that someone's going to drive by and see and they're going to get in trouble. So it would be a good place for them to hang out. We also suggested places that cater, they also suggested places that cater to young people, like an arcade, ice cream shop, or a place with good Wi-Fi that they could do their homework, get together with groups that they're working on group projects in school, and work together. Another idea for engaging young people might be a youth-run business. Perhaps the high school FBLA class could help set up a shop in one of the empty storefronts where they serve coffee, have Wi-Fi, just a place that young people could run the business, learn about entrepreneurship, learn about running a small business, perhaps taking over for a business that closes, when you retire or you need someone to take over a new storefront. All right. Do I have another one? Oh no, this is the same one. Okay, a couple other ideas we had. Those were good suggestions for high school students. Kids like construction. We thought a way to engage really young kids or smaller kids would be to dump a pile of sand somewhere, put a bunch of digging tools, so while the construction's happening on High Street, the kids could be pretending they're constructing something a block over. So a simple sandbox where kids can play while their parents are shopping on High Street, something for them to do. Also, some of the students said that there are opportunities for some art for them to do, but they don't really feel very connected to it, so maybe specifically gearing art classes towards high school students where they could come out and do, where it's just for their age group, and they could really get into it and feel part of the downtown. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so a couple of things that we came up with to help mitigate that potential slowdown in foot traffic. We are proposing that the high street businesses could participate in some pop-up markets during the time that their portion of the street is under construction. So remember we talked about the phasing of the project? So during the phase that is happening in front of a particular business, those businesses would have an opportunity to sell some of their goods at a pop-up market. This could look a couple different ways. This could look a couple different ways. One idea that we had is that we noticed there were some vacant buildings that we could do this in, whether that is the former bank building or a different building downtown that could be turned into a pop-up store. We also considered, so the photo on the left up here is kind of a Christmas market type facility, and in this case, this was a community where this was more of a permanent structure, but they could also be built such that they're movable. So it could be something where, as the project moves on, during each phase, those get moved. So they could be on a side street, they could be in some of the parking lots that we've identified over there. So just really trying to create a additional location for some of those businesses to be set up in a spot that's more concentrated during the time that they are a bit inconvenienced with their storefront times. Another thing that we thought was important was offering some chances to interact with the construction crews. So one of those ideas was just kind of making some opportunities to show gratitude to them for the work that they'll be doing while they're here. This could look at a variety of ways. For one, there could be a weekly cookout or dinner that the community hosts. That is a chance for the community and the construction crew to get to know each other and kind of spend some time together. Because they're going to be spending their entire summer in your community working on your road. So we just thought it would be a nice way to kind of get to know each other and have that back and forth. Other displays of gratitude could be small things, surprise donuts or things like that, just kind of to go build that rapport going back and forth. We also talked about, and I know Kristen mentioned those every other week, those meetings that will be happening with the contractor. So just really making it accessible for everyone to get to know the contractor and make sure that that's happening. And we also talked about really emphasizing with the contractor, this is an option, that on Fridays, the crew is done a little bit early, and that the businesses work together and say that on Fridays, that's our day that we're open a little bit later, and that we're really gonna focus our business hours on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because that's when the construction crews are done. And so that's when we're gonna really push our businesses to be open and work together as a team and focus on that time, because that's when the construction crews will not be here. Another thing that we wanted to talk about is really taking this as a chance to assess the impact. So we recommend doing some surveys and other tools to measure foot traffic and sales, and we would do this kind of throughout. So we would do this before construction starts, throughout construction, right afterwards, and then 6 months after as well. This just allows us to be able to show you guys as a community how this has impacted and how hopefully how much businesses have grown. So as Bill was kind of giving you some ideas of how this project can be a net growth opportunity for your businesses, this is how we assess that. And so this is work that Barry would work with you guys on, and bringing in other members of our team as well. And then at the end of the project, of course, it's time to celebrate. So our vision for this is a big grand reopening, and that starts with the celebratory ribbon cutting, where we get out those big scissors and the huge ribbon that's going across the street. We have the mayor and the council and all the business owners on High Street, and we cut the big ribbon. And as soon as that's over, then we have this huge street festival that's celebrating all of the businesses downtown, and that everyone has made it through this huge project. And we thought that we would throw in a car cruise to really bring in some additional visitors and give us a really colorful background, just for a really spectacular day, to really leave a really good impression on this project, and just kind of end things up with a bang. So that is the end of the how, and I'm going to hand it on to Todd about what's next.
Okay, what is next? Mobilizing the community. So we kind of are ending our presentation to where we began, which is with the who. So we showed you a lot of what and a lot of how, and a lot of that how and what is a guess, is our best guess, with the time that we had with your community, with the data that we collected, with what we know about design and construction, and about community development and economic development. It's about our best guess at this point. But the one thing that we are really certain about is it doesn't happen. None of this happens without this. Does that make sense? It's not empowering the mayor. It's not empowering the chamber. It's not empowering one or two businesses or a couple of key folks. It's empowering the entire community. So this is a time in which you get to decide who you are as a community. And you have to set aside some things. And you have to try to figure out where common ground is at. And you might have to let go of some personal ambitions and ideas for something that's more important for everyone. Does that make sense? Good, good. Because then it's really easy, right? After you do all of that, right? So it's going to take some time, but you've got lots of really great resources. And to begin with, you have a great town. You have a great downtown. And everybody in Wisconsin knows that High Street is a really amazing street in Wisconsin. If you grow up in Wisconsin, you know about Mineral Point because in your mind, you have at some point in your time experienced either in person or pictures of High Street. And we don't want to screw that up, right? Right? Right. Okay. So, you're lucky in the fact you got somebody like Barry that's just down the road from you. You're lucky in the sense you got committed community members and business members and folks who just love this place. Not every community has that. And so there's people here that care about it. You have a resource that already exists, it's amazing. And you have Barry, your local extension educator, who's got tools, he's got information, he's got resources, and he is connected to an army of extension and UW-Madison folks that are here to help. Barry. So it's going to start with some learning, some awareness, getting people to understand the vocabulary of what we're talking about. It's very hard to start pushing an idea or an agenda until everybody is grounded in the fundamentals. So it's things like this in which you get together and you talk about what is High Street. And you talk about the potential for High Street. And you talk about who's involved and why they're involved and why it's important. But then we're going to talk about what makes for a good place and what are the things that we value most. And then we're going to look for extension and university and consultants and there's lots of folks, WDC, the Main Street program. There are countless resources out there. And we're just here to help you navigate through those resources and try to find the resources that work best for you. All right. Before you leave tonight, if you feel like you have the power, the passion, the interest to be a part of this moving forward, we have sign-up sheets on either side here with a pen, your name and some sort of contact information. And know that we are here for you. And thank you again to the community for inviting us, and thank you for my team members who spent time away from their family and friends to be with our new friends.
So does anyone have any questions that we can try and help answer, or concerns or thoughts? Yes, Joe.
There was a lot last night about parking, and I like the car park idea here and the wayfinding, but what about wayfinding to find the parking? The parking lots, has that been addressed in any way?
I don't know if you saw some of the signage. Can you go to the slide that has signs that were created?
Yes, just a second.
I believe Mike was talking about that. Right here. So you can see the middle sign there, Joe, but I mean, it would have been easy to miss, so I'm not, but the middle sign there is trying to address signage in general and wayfinding, and there's an example of the nice blue parking stripe.
I missed that, so.
No problem, but it's a great point.
And another thing that we talked about too is, most communities this size don't have the amount of local artists living and working in a community like this. And I guess I would challenge those folks to rise to the occasion and let's see what they can come up with. This is what we came up with in a few hours. But I know that there's a lot of talent and a lot of love in this community, and I would love to see what a Mineral Point parking directional signage wayfinding device might look like. Something that you'll never find anywhere else in the world. Because to me, that's what's right for Mineral Point.
Yes, sir.
Just on the park, to continue on parking, where the city garage is now, it's closed down actually, I think. But I've been speaking for many months now with a lot of residents who agree that that would probably be a great parking lot, believe it or not. I mean, you can pretty it up the way you guys were talking about it, but I mean, we're looking at long-term needs for parking that are near High Street and frankly Commerce Street as well. So that looked like a really great place for that, rather than putting housing. Just gotta say.
And that certainly could work, to your point. I think that's where working together to create that vision of what that space may be. Again, we just tried to develop some thoughts and ideas of what could be possible.
So yeah, that is a good question, and on just from an observational standpoint, it doesn't appear like you have a parking supply problem, but we didn't count parking. Okay, so we don't know. We know there's a lot more people that live in downtown than we realized. So the idea of doing a little more technical due diligence on something like that, we would actually count the supply and find out where it is, find out how many residents you've got within 2-3 blocks of High Street, and look at that we tend to address parking as a technical issue, and you saw that, okay? And part of that is management, managing employees, managing business owners, where they park on a daily basis, organizing that parking. Somebody mentioned about, well, when do we pick up the garbage? Having common sense rules and policies about when's the best time to have those kinds of traffic and vehicles in downtown. And the idea of parking and so what we're looking at here are at least a couple car parks that have been gained in addition to showing this idea of Fountain Village. And maybe it's a little bit of housing, maybe it's a little bit of parking, who knows? But I think there's a due diligence and a technical issue there that might need a little more attention, so, yeah.
You had a general idea of the kind of outreach to the entire community going forward, keeping the community informed and updated on the process and involved as well?
So hopefully that's what can be done with these sign-up sheets, that we'd like to continue the dialogue, continue the conversation, continue to gather like we did last night as a group and facilitate these discussions so that some of these things to address concerns of providing options and layout. This is what you want to see. This is how you want it phased. This is what you want to make sure that businesses aren't shut down for more than 30 minutes so that people can walk through your front door. These are the things that you need to lay out. You are the customer for this project. And this is your town and your community, and you get to decide some of these things. But that's where we need to have more conversations, and because this isn't going to actually take place probably until at the earliest maybe 2021, now's the time to work out some of these details so that when it happens, that we've thought about as many things as we can. We've brought in all these great resources that we have available so that we're looking at all the art of the possible.
What is the farthest point from the project going up the street and point? Up to Ridge Street.
Ridge Street, up to Ridge Street.
What's your take? I mean, you've seen a lot of small towns this size. What do you feel are the strengths and weaknesses? I mean, just looking at it as a kind of retail community, what's your big picture?
Strengths and weaknesses of redoing High Street, or?
I mean, just the town itself. What, just a dispassionate analysis.
All right. How much time we got? Where you guys gonna go? Yeah.
What's the score?
All right. So through the survey, one of the things when we talk about this is a cherished community for Wisconsin, as you're saying that, I'm like, my 4th grade textbook, my kid's 4th grade textbook, every kid sees a picture of, which street do you think they see a picture of in their textbook when they're learning about the history of Wisconsin? Take a guess. Shake Rig Alley. Every 4th grade kid that grows up in Wisconsin knows about Shake Rag Alley, that this community is the start of our state. So I would say that the first biggest strength is it's cooked right into our curriculum, K through 12, of who Mineral Point is and what the significance of the community is. So there's that. The second thing, when I look at the survey results, there are one thing that stands out above a lot of communities. I do these surveys in a number of communities. One of the issues that we tend to have in small towns in Wisconsin is that when new people move to communities that are long established, it's difficult to get to know people. So when I opened up that first wave of survey results and I analyzed the numbers, and people that have lived in Mineral Point for less than 5 years, for less than 10 years, say that it was easy to get to know people. The community they found to be open-minded to new ideas, embracing of new people. You cannot manufacture that. We can't teach that. We can't build that in a community. It's either there or it's not there. And so even though that's not, that doesn't seem to directly translate itself into retail vitality, it does mean that entrepreneurs can move to town, feel embraced, feel supported, feel that they have a network of people to work with here. So I would say that culture is one of the great strengths. So a well-known community, a community that's open and embracing to people, can't manufacture that. The third thing is that 142 visitors, I think we sent out maybe 1 or 2 emails to people who had taken classes or visited in the area, filled out surveys. That's really unusual as well. Maybe I get 24 people when we do that in most communities. So you have an invested group of people from outside of the community that are interested and have a stake in seeing Mineral Point succeed. And these are people outside of the school district, because we consider those folks residents. So these are people that are coming from Chicago, that are coming up from Dubuque for the day, that are coming from Wausau or wherever it is that they're coming from that want to be here. So when we talk about how do you minimize that retail loss that we know is a vulnerability when you're doing a construction, a pop-up market where, let's say we do get construction to stop at noon on Friday, and we've cultivated that relationship by loving our construction workers, and they want to come to work and they want to work really hard for us. So I'm starting at noon on Friday, Saturday, and I know traditionally Mineral Point is not open on Sundays. That's true of Spring Green and many other small communities, particularly in the summer. We have a limited number of days that we get good weather, and we also need time for ourselves and our families. But maybe for this one summer season, we shift it so that we're adding an extra retail day on that day. And so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, every weekend becomes a big deal. Maybe there is a night market every other week or every other week. Maybe there's a pop-up market where if your store is experiencing less retail traffic than normal, maybe it's akin to a farmer's market. It can be a wooden structure that the high schoolers are constructing that you can secure, or maybe it's the equivalent of a farmer's market where you're setting up shop under a tent. But that becomes a special thing that gets marketed. So there's a lot of possibilities here. So I'd say that those are probably the 3 strengths. You've got people who want to be here and want to spend money here that are not from the area, so you're gardening that way. Second, you've got an openness. And third, you're just a well-known community. So I think we can build on those things. And I'm hoping that Barry calls on me when I get back to Madison to help out. Bill? And Bill is an amazing downtown.
Just one comment. Going around the state, I traveled with cities all around the state of Wisconsin, and most of those places are selling retail, the kind of retail you buy in a shopping center or Macy's or someplace. They call it GAFO, general merchandise, apparel, furnishings. Those are the things that are being hit by the internet right now. But what you guys have here is a niche. The arts niche is just uncomparable. And all around the Midwest, people look to your city, to your community, as an example of what kind of retail could work. Now, the mix of retail and food and beverage is not a question. There might be some imbalance there, I'm not sure. But what you have, your core root retail work is in place, and it's really stronger. So I encourage you not to drop it, not to change course.
I just wanted to say something quick. Being in Lancaster, we just rebuilt downtown. And I can tell you right now, you're not going to have the problem that Cambridge had because you're all here tonight. You're having the dialogue, you're having the communication. You're looking at how you're going to get into your buildings, how you're going to get into the stores, and how you're going to frequent those stores. We're having all the conversations here. We've got plenty of ideas here. You're going to come up with more ideas in the next year and a half, 2 years, whenever this happens, and you're going to be great because you know what? We all want to come to Mineral Point. I come here all the time. I come here for Penn Air. I come here for Pendarvis. I come here for all these things. You have the draws, and you have the people, and you have the communication going right now. And we just went through it this year in Lancaster. We had tons of meetings. We set up how you were going to get into buildings, what was the entry, how we were going to phase it, how we were going to get it. We didn't have any business lose any time for people to get in. We set up plenty of parking, and you're going to have plenty of parking. So everything's going to go well because you guys are here and you're planning, and we're here to help you.
Thanks, David. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Hey, please sign up on these sheets, if you will, and willing to be a part of more conversations, please sign up. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for everybody that gave us time and resources. We appreciate it.